So this is our first building which we designed as a practice, and since I finished OMA, this was my independent first building. It was very, very exciting to go to the site, and you can see on the site there's not much context around it. And as we know, the speed architecture somehow is kind of relating to speed factory production and assembly on site. So in a way, architecture of a speed production is kind of perhaps it's an object. So it's kind of a specific architecture. So Georgia is kind of trying to find its own language, and distinctively, this building stands out as a prominent beacon of Georgian architecture, of modernity, and somehow starts and gives the vector of the direction of architecture in modern architecture in Georgia, I think. And another part is because of the departure of Soviet Union from the Soviet Union and the lack of regulations, the architecture vernacular somehow started to change with ad hoc design. You can see in the background the Stalinistic building and attached kind of so-called kamikaze loggia. Kamikaze, obviously, because it's a kind of suicidal way of building buildings and adding something to the structure. So we kind of started analyzing the historical patterns, what defines Georgian architecture somehow, and we start from the 5th century cave buildings, cave monastery in Vadze in western Georgia, where you can see that there are no windows and the doors, but the rooms are right on the edge of the cliff. So somehow kind of defining the benchmark between the internal and external spaces are defined by the edge, somehow which through the centuries somehow developed into the architecture of attached balconies as a sort of form of a cantilever. So I'm not trying to say that I claim that Georgia architecture is defined by a cantilever, but somehow I would like to draw attention to this and show that that's kind of the case, because in 20th century this building also is defined by the difficult landscape superimposed with the superstructure with huge cantilevers built in 1975. So and then possibly I have an audacity to say that our building in 21st century represents kind of the continuation of the sequence with our building, which is suspended from the top, and it's kind of, it has about 22-meter cantilevers. So we started designing this building and looked at the notion of the frame, because somehow the first thing which happened was I received a phone call from the chief prosecutor of the city, and they wanted to build a building, and they said you have 3 days to submit a proposal, and if you win the proposal, we can build this. So we had to really speed to brainstorming what we're gonna do, and we looked to the kind of idea of a framework as a kind of judiciary system, and whatever happens, what can be captured and what defines the frame. So this kind of collage or images, collection of images, somehow are defining the understanding of the frame and relationship of the internal parts and the frame. So we looked also at the research. We did research of the prosecutors of the world, and didn't get any much of the inspiration out of it, but at least kind of looked at the spectrum of it. And then we looked at the law and the image of the law. somehow, and we thought that if we kind of superimpose the frame, then the internal part of the wall can be really adjusted and adapted to the current conditions of the changing world, and adaptation and the distillation of the law will be the very important part from departure from the Soviet past and moving towards democracy. So we kind of materialized this in this idea into a kind of the volume that we had from the client. So somehow this diagram shows that, like, we have this required program. We can condense it and then kind of reframe it into kind of material frame. Also, we had this the idea of Henry Moore's think in itself, and the helmet head somehow also correlated with the idea of frame and the notion of internal organization within the frame. So we have this program, and literally we did this. We took this program as a program bar and translated it into physical forms. Because without a context, we had kind of vague red lines, and those red lines could have been filled with any kind of architecture, but because of our analysis, we kind of came with this kind of form. So, and we did a couple of tests, and we realized that the frame, within the frame, can be anything. So it doesn't really matter what form can be inside and what the content inside is, as long as the frame stays intact. So we submitted this model to the client, and it was accepted straight away. So as soon as it was accepted, at 1 o'clock a.m., the prosecutor and his team came to our office just to check if it was real or not. So, and when they saw the model, basically the decision was made, and they wanted to start construction immediately, which was quite a challenge because the site had lots of water. Now we'll come back to it. And so what the chief prosecutor, when we started talking to this guy, he apparently was a Led Zeppelin fan, and the Stairway to Heaven was his idea. So we kind of introduced this the staircase as a part of kind of internal alleyway towards the light. So we kind of thought that the light in the end of the staircase is what justice should be, and the prosecutor really liked that idea. And when we kind of materialized it, he was very happy, always saying like, "This is my staircase." So also the staircase somehow worked as a departure from this clustered Soviet prosecutors' offices, which never had any interaction, and this internal street became very kind of open and interactive point of the whole building. And always, because the building is situated towards this hole is situated towards the south, you always see the sun coming into that hole, and the contour of the human disappearing in this kind of light. And also this atrium somehow works as an internal ventilation for the whole building. So you can see this kind of stair going all the way up, and there is a secret stairs which is going to the top floor, which is the private floor for the prosecutor. And this glass always kind of reflects the sun, because it's a Pilkington glass with a very, very refined edges. It has this quality of refracting light in a very interesting way. The structure of the building is, is about 40% concrete and 60% steel. At the back, the cores and the archives are made of concrete, and the rest is made of steel. The site required, as I say, required a piling, but the prosecutor demanded construction immediately. And what they did, it was the rough. They wanted to create a rough foundation on the and so to create a pillow and to build later on whatever design was to build on top of it. So somehow the tractors sank because they didn't believe the geotechnical engineer that the current of the slope was as an anomaly against the geology. So the tractor sank, and we gained about a month and a half before we made a calculation for the piles, which was which was quite interesting for us as well, because we were panicking to kind of design the building how it should be. And you should understand that Georgia has 8 seismic scale magnitude, so it's kind of challenging to have this kind of building built with such a huge cantilever. So the fabrication of the beam is quite large. We fabricated in a factory is about a meter deep, and kind of supports the building where the building is suspended from that kind of frame. It was very exciting to see the assortment of the different assortment of the steel and see it erected on the site, and finally the staircase, which was materializing and making the prosecutor very happy. It was quite so what was the kind of condition of this hall was very interesting for us as well, to create a kind of urban interior space where you can go inside the building but not really be inside the building, and having kind of this covered space, internal, external space. So if we look at the plan, so you can see the growth of the plan and growth of the staircase, creating this different kind of staggering volumes on top of each other, and the top floor dedicated to the prosecutor and the internal sunken courtyard with a very thin view towards because the sun kind of, the evening sun moves from here, it would be impossible to stay here otherwise. Now this is the sunken courtyard, you can see. And these are the bridges of the interior, the reflecting light and the ventilation spots, and you can see that the corridor around the building is running. So we finished this building in 8 months from the beginning. So from the submitting of this first model of the competition, we finished this building in 8 months. So for 8 months, basically, the building was built, which is a terrific speed in condition of the slow architecture in general. And we have been very happy to kind of see this, to work out the details and materialize this building. So from the behind, it's kind of more solid. This building it has more of the kind of facade which responds exactly to the program of the building, because the thin slits of the building, as you can understand, are the interrogation rooms for people, and they have to be quite narrow in order to prevent them from jumping out of the window. So, these are the European guidelines. So, So you can see in this picture this departure from the old Soviet past of prosecutor's office and creating a new direction, which was apparently a state kind of direction superimposed on human on the society. The next building I want to show is Lazika Town Hall. It's a new type of a service hall which was introduced as a speed e-governance hub, which offers people to get their documents from one window. So this, the below volume is a service hall, and this is the wedding hall, and on top is the offices. So we have to understand that Georgia is not very, not very rich country, and the ratio of concrete with water is preferred way of construction. Is preferred way of kind of dealing with corruption, and also it's kind of very cheap. So the building which we proposed is as you can see, is a kind of a really big contrast from what can be achieved if the system works properly. So it only last year, only this year, sorry, the general plan of Tbilisi city was established, and only 3 or 4 years ago, the IBC code, International Building Code, was also adapted to Georgian code. So when we had been designing these buildings, there were no codes. So because we had to, because we worked with London engineers, we designed these buildings on the basis of Eurocode. So the site is on the edge of the Black Sea. It's a new planned city, new planned deep water port, which is going to be built there, and there's a big drama around this kind of port, and also it has to have the anticipated city behind it, which is supposed to be a free economic zone. And our building was supposed to be the first building in the city to give the kind of the direction of the city. So we specifically, when we saw this image, we wanted to depart from this horrific kind of way of plonking these buildings without any kind of sense of a place, and somehow elevate our building and create a kind of a new condition, specifically when the area, this is the site of our building, and when the area adjacent to our site is a national park, Korheti National Park, where the migratory birds from the East Africa, West Asian flyway, they have a stopover here. So it's a stunning place, beautiful place, and we had the fears that the city will expand so badly that it will kind of destroy this place. So we kind of thought that it is important to kind of suspend and give the air to the land. So we did some tests of the geology, and again, because of the approximation with the Black Sea, the depth where you can actually put the pile it was between 27 and 30 meters. So the piles, what we actually put down underneath this building, were about 35 meters, and also the local architecture of this area is all still supported to have a ventilation underneath. This is a traditional local architecture, which we kind of draw our inspiration also. And we looked at the different precedents, and we did our research about several buildings which have been proposed but not many built, except of Will Alsop's shop center. We also looked at the idea of Jona Friedman's floating city. So we kind of put these ideas together, and somehow it coincided with our kind of first sketch, which our architect did for the proposal. So so when this was also a competition, and when we submitted this competition, it was rejected straight away. And for 3 months, we hadn't heard from the client. And when we submitted, it was quite a late night, about 4 a.m. We submitted this project, and in about an hour, I received a very difficult text from very high authority saying you should never dare to submit this kind of buildings to us anymore. It was quite a frightening text, and the studio refused to come next day to the office because they were just frightened what to expect. So we carried on, and in 3 months' time, I received a phone call from the president of Georgia and saying, like, "Oh, dude, we like your building, we want to build it, and we have an opening day on 20th of September," and that was it. So this was the kind of the first sketch where we started this building, and we had exactly again 6 months to complete the building. And somehow from the model, which we kind of envisioned, the reality became this very, very soon. So again, the building program was very, very similar, very, very simple. As I mentioned, there was a wedding hall, the service hall, and the offices at the top. And when we had this full program as a box, we divided in parts and created this kind of form, and then supported on stilts. So with the scale comparison, if you compare our building with the Sharp Center design by Will also, you can see this kind of quite a big difference, although image-wise they look very, very similar. And when I met Will, because I worked in his office for a couple of years, and I really admired his work. And when I met Will at Testbed in Battersea, because I was looking for an office, I showed him this project. He was outraged that I stole this idea from him, and then we kind of became very good friends after that, because he said, "Oh, well, how tall is your building?" I said, 18 meters. Mine is 26, he said, and I won. And so it was a kind of a very interesting way how we engage with each other. So he gave me a part of his office where we started our permanent studio in London. These are one of the first sketches which we generated, and started from there. This building has only 3 plans. The plan of the ground floor service hall is a very simple open plan with different kind of shapes and boxes in it, which are dedicated to different programs. And then we have a wedding hall, which is an empty hall with massive stairs, which are going up. So we wanted to make the stairs as long as possible in order for the couples to make up their mind if they wanted to change their mind before they reach their kind of pod. And they have this, and then this pod is attached with a glass bridge with this huge terrace for the party. And the top floor is for offices. It's quite kind of dense space and quite efficient kind of space. And we have this kind of internal courtyard, suspended courtyard. So we have this kind of picture frame of the sky. So the building was fully prefabricated. By the time we put the piles together, so So you can see this, the top volume is about 35 by 35 square meters, and the volume underneath has about 35 tiles as well. So it's kind of a balance. What you see on the top is double the size underneath. So it was very, very exciting to see the site. And actually, the last 3 months, our architect lived on the site. Because our office was 7 hours away from the site, and it demanded daily engagement. So there was no webcams at that time to attach to the site. So we erected first this piles, these stilts, and we see this lovely rural picture of this wonderful cow and the greenery and this alien kind of steel structure going against the white sky. And a wonderful view from the top floor on this marshlands in the sea. So the building is quite big in a way, and it's quite imposing. And my family absolutely hated this building when they went there, just because it was so frightening, because all the volumes are somehow detached and attached only with the glass. And if you want to go to the top floor, you have to kind of go into the glass red lift. So the entrance somehow became this reference to this wave, which kind of draws you into the building and creates a kind of a canopy. And internally, it's the wedding hall is also it has a similar material from the ceiling and the floor. And what I really like about this building is that it has this kind of columns which are penetrating the building in some kind of very chaotic way. And if you kind of rotate this building from every point, none of the columns are parallel. So it has this sensation of this kind of rural marshlands of emptiness with this industrial kind of metalwork, prefabricated building, which is kind of brought to the site. And it was quite a big challenge, because 6 months to design this building and to build it is quite a big effort, and we have not slept for about 6 months during this period. So inside this interiors, we have this we use this colored glass, because when you see the superimposing on each other, it creates some kind of different colors as well. So we thought it's a kind of an interesting way of creating the spaces inside. So this is this red glass lift, which kind of leads to the top. And while you travel through this lift, you see this the landscape completely in red, so the green becomes dark brown. And when you arrive, so the top floor is also kind of the red carpeted, so it has this reflection of red. So the third building, which I want to show you, it was also designed in a very, very fast pace. It's a National Olympic House, a renovation of a 19th century neoclassical house, which was a private residence for one of wealthy merchants, and then it became the residence of Lavrenti Beria, who was the Stalin's secret police chief. So all the plans of the buildings have been in the archive untouchable. So we couldn't really, or they were lost, so we couldn't really get those plans. So this building was we had to engage this building without drawings, which was quite a challenge because again 6 months in April we have been engaged with the client, and in September on the date the Prince Albert of Monaco was going to come and open this building for the National Olympic Committee House. So and the condition was the wow factor. We had to create some kind of wow factor for the prince to have a great memorable experience. So we thought that's the only way to when we looked at the building, we thought that this staircase was anyway not original, and it was built in 60s. It was a very bad quality staircase, so we thought we need to replace this staircase. But for the staircase was something quite interesting. So because the building was reconstructed so many times, about 3 or 4 times, we couldn't trace we couldn't basically, because we didn't have the analysis of the building, of the heritage statement. We had to kind of go and excavate the building as we went, and we realized that the new parts which we demolished, basically they were newly built, so we kind of retained the original qualities of the 19th century building. So what we tried to do is we found a space. The staircase was running usually normally in this place. And we found in the plan the empty space, which we started to excavate and try to open up voids and try to kind of put this meandering staircase in this place. So in a way, this staircase was designed without actual drawing. These drawings are just in kind of indicative. And we had to work on site to work on this, to work out the details. And the idea of this staircase came from this Olympic runner who is kind of cutting this or taking this Olympic ribbon and becoming a champion somehow. So we thought this meandering staircase has to be this difficult route to the Olympus. So the fabrication was in situ. So the plates had been welded on site, attached to the walls, and then clad with the thin plywood. And so where the staircase were not bending, we tried to kind of bend it on site rather than kind of create some kind of drawing and analyze it. So kind of people worked almost 24 hours a day. But this office, this building was 10 minutes away from our office, so it was easier to kind of monitor. And then on top of this, the plywood was finished with the maple veneer, so iron on top of it. So we can see this kind of effect of this kind of timber staircase going through this structure of this building. And you can see the refined details, although the timing and the scales. You can see that the quality of the staircase and the curves are quite significant. And we have this amazing kind of spaces going through this kind of staircase and having this amazing experiences of this timber. And also we designed this museum, which we thought was a funny idea to use a running track happens on the floor. this was the building. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikoloz. It's fantastic. If you have questions, anybody, do pitch them in the chat box to the side. Could you just, maybe such a distinctive model of practice that you're kind of straddled across multiple countries? Could you just describe a little about how that works for you? On a kind of day-to-day basis, how have you, how you've set up the responsibility in London and in Georgia?
Well, the system is very, very simple. From the beginning, we have been designing these buildings through Skype and Dropbox, and everyone is more or less flexible. Today's pandemic, everybody's at home, but in general, there are at the moment there are 2 permanent offices in London and Georgia where people are, and our server is on cloud anyway. So this kind of we started using Dropbox from 10 years now. So we have been prepared to this with this condition. So we never send each other files and have been sketching through Skype. It was very, very good. So mostly I'm involved in every project, but it's a collaborative practice, and everybody's a part of it, and it's not vertical. It's more kind of chaotic, I would say, and lateral somehow. Yeah.
And the projects you were showing were all public projects in one way or another, I suppose. I mean, is there also work for the commercial sector, or is there much less?
Yeah, we have done a lot of projects. Basically, we have done about more than 100 projects, and out of these 100 projects, in these 10 years, we finished 10 buildings, and we built 5 buildings in Moscow, and one of them is on site now. I haven't shown. Possibly I should have showed on this presentation, but it was. If I wanted to focus exactly on the speed rather than, because it's a kind of a catchy idea, and for me it kind of defined our direction and trained the team. It's kind of doing competition, but also building it. So it was quite a good experience.
And are there kind of lessons from that experience in Georgia that you'd bring back to the work that you're trying to make in the UK, or are they just a very different sort of completely different sort of building cultures?
Well, because the Georgian regulations are not formed yet, it's kind of much easier to kind of navigate there, and somehow we have been trying to kind of create a Eurocode system, but the government decided to go with IBC, so we had this engagement with the ministries to kind of link Europe with Georgia, but it's completely different. The principal difference is that the client in Georgia or in Russia demands 2 things. It's the rendering and the area calculations. And then you have to kind of rewind your process. You have to match expectations to this first rendering, which is sometimes almost impossible with the conditions which you might have discovered, especially with the reconstruction of the building or something.
Nikoloz, we have a question from Arthur. Arthur, I'm going to unmute you. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I was just wondering about that scary text that you received asking you not to submit that type of building again. I wasn't clear what the particular sentiment was. What was it? The design type or the?
I thought they were offended that we acted too audaciously against the ministerial kind of consciousness. That they were Ministry of Justice were our kind of clients, and at that time the transition time, there was if you imagine this terrific speed where we are kind of doing all those things, they also, in that kind of speed, changing the structure of the whole country. So it was a kind of a scary institution to receive a text like that, and I thought they were just offended of our audacity, and that's it. It was, I was really shocked. I didn't expect, because it was just an image. But I thought they thought we are making fool of them. So.
Because of the imagination, the imagination of the design, or
yes, somehow like it was so different whatever they expected to receive, and usually they would receive some kind of a rendering of a building which is round in a box or something like that, and there was a sketch of something floating in the air. So they thought that maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing it's the connotations could have been different, that they are questioning their authority or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in the end, the president somehow saw this image. I suspect that everything else was not exciting for him personally, and then he just overruled the situation. He just basically chose and called him. So it was funny time.
Thanks.
Now we've got another question from I don't know what you're called for real, but you're room 418, and I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, Nika.
Hi, Vano.
Yeah, I couldn't change my name somehow. So I'm Vano. I just wrote the question, actually. So you've been describing all these three projects as highly intense and extreme, chaotic, rather crazy, as you said, conditions. And I was wondering if that was the charm of your of that period of your practice. How do you feel with working with normal, let's say, normal models of work?
Well, the architecture is a process, right? But though that time, I think it was the best time I ever experienced architecture, even better than OMA, because somehow the team was amazing. Everyone was different, and you have to understand. There was the people were almost without formal education, and there were only a couple of guys who went to the university who had actually done architecture in a coherent way, and the rest had been just enthusiasts who knew just few rules in CAD. Or did some models, but they loved architecture, but they had never had a chance to engage. And so we picked these guys from randomly, because a lot of people, we had a team of 15 people sitting, and on top of it, we had about 20 people just hanging out in the studio, doing nothing, just watching who is doing what. It was quite annoying, but in the end, so you would ask one of them, they were shy because they had no idea what to do. So you would tell one guy, can you just cut this board in two halves, and so on and so on. And somehow people got very, very interested. And it was absolutely fantastic time, because the density of the engagement was very, very interesting as well. Somehow unquestionable, and at the same time the mind flowed. But the normal time is also quite interesting, because you have more constraints and you have to kind of navigate through them. It's quite intense as well, especially in London.